This training covers Chapter 19, For-Profit Programs, focusing on adult daycare programs. For child care centers and outside school hours care centers, please view the separate training specific to those programs. This training is presented by the Oregon Department of Education Child Nutrition Programs, also known as ODE-CNP. CACFP sponsors that are for-profit organizations must comply with all CACFP requirements for their program type as covered in the other ODE-CNP trainings and the CACFP Policy and Procedure Center Manual. For-profit organizations have additional requirements that must be met and maintained per federal regulation to qualify as a CACFP sponsor and to receive reimbursement for meals served. In this training video, we will go over how to qualify for CACFP as a for-profit organization, the procedure for determining for-profit eligibility, record-keeping requirements specific to for-profit sponsors, submission of a monthly claim for reimbursement, and changes in ownership and how that affects the CACFP. By the end of this training, you will understand the CACFP requirements that are specific to for-profit organizations, be able to implement systems in your center to properly document for-profit eligibility, including record keeping and claim submission, and to support those systems with written procedures. And be familiar with what is required if there is an ownership change. What are the requirements to qualify for CACFP as a for-profit organization? For-profit adult daycare centers may be CACFP eligible if they meet the following requirements. Provide non-residential daycare to adults 60 years old and over, or functionally impaired adults ages 18 and above, and 25% of participants in care are beneficiaries of Title 19 of the Social Security Act, also known as Medicaid. Please note there are requirements that adult daycare centers must meet outside of the for-profit requirements in order to qualify to be a CACFP sponsor. Please refer to the ODE CACFP Center Manual, Chapter 21, or related trainings located on our public webpage for more information. For multi-site sponsors, this requirement must be met at each site, not at the sponsor level. The for-profit center requirements are outlined in the federal regulation listed on the screen. Next, let's talk about when this requirement must be met. New CACFP applicants must meet the 25% eligibility in the month preceding the initial application. Applicants will work with the assigned specialist during the application process to determine which month will be used. All for-profit sponsors must determine and certify that the eligibility requirement is met every month prior to submitting a claim for reimbursement. As mentioned in the previous slide, this determination must be done at every site operating CACFP. It is possible that not all sites will qualify to claim meals for reimbursement each month. Now that we know sponsors must determine 25% eligibility for each site every month prior to submitting a claim for meal reimbursement, we'll go over what that determination process looks like. First, gather and maintain current Title 19 or Medicaid eligibility for each month claimed. Then you will create a for-profit roster for each site, which is a list of participants that were in care that month and their eligibility category. Verify this roster against the site's attendance records for the month to ensure all participants in care are included. Only participants that were in attendance during the month can be listed on the roster. Lastly, determine eligibility. Total the number of Title 19 or Medicaid eligible participants and divide that number by the total site enrollment or the licensed capacity of the site, whichever is less. If the resulting percentage is equal to or greater than 25%, then the site qualifies for CACFP meal reimbursement for that month. Let's take a closer look at what the for-profit roster is and what it must contain. As stated on the previous slide, a for-profit roster is a list of all participants that were in care during the claim month. The list must document the following: participant's full name, first and last, and Title 19 eligibility, if applicable, and the date that the eligibility was approved. Most sponsors use the ODE CACFP 1-month enrollment roster, otherwise known as the OMER document, as the for-profit roster. The OMER contains all of the required components of a for-profit roster, and since sponsors are required to complete an OMER annually, it's simple to create a copy rather than to create a whole new roster. Current documentation showing Title 19 or Medicaid eligibility must be maintained. Any participants without eligibility documentation must be listed as above scale on the roster. It's important to note that accurately reviewing and documenting eligibility information is vital to the process of ensuring the for-profit eligibility. Incorrectly documenting eligibility could result in meal disallows and findings during an administrative review. Refer to the ODE C&P CACFP Center Manual and related trainings found on our public webpage for more information on adult programs and the OMER. The OMER and for-profit roster are similar but separate processes with some key differences that are important to be familiar with. Let's compare the main differences. The purpose of the OMER is to determine the unique reimbursement rate for the year based on eligibility categories of each participant, whereas the for-profit roster is used to determine if the site meets the 25% Title 19 Medicaid eligibility in order to claim meals for the month. The OMER is required to be completed only once per year, in October or the first month of operation in the fiscal year. The for-profit roster, however, is required to be completed every month. The eligibility determination is the biggest difference between the OMER and the for-profit rosters. When creating the OMER, eligibility determination can be based on a valid confidential income statement, or CIS, which uses income or public benefits, or Title 19 Medicaid benefits. However, the for-profit eligibility is based only on Title 19 Medicaid benefits. Income and other public benefits cannot be used to determine the for-profit eligibility. This can be confusing, so let's run through a real-life scenario that you might run across. A CIS is approved in September as free based on income, and that participant is listed on the October OMER as free. However, because that participant does not receive Title 19 Medicaid benefits, they must be listed as above scale on the for-profit roster. One thing that both processes do have in common is that both the OMER and the for-profit roster documents are required for all for-profit adult daycare centers. Now that we've gone over the differences between the OMER and the for-profit roster, we'll take a look at how to complete the form for the purpose of a for-profit roster. Begin by filling out the top section of the sheet. Once completed, this information will roll over every month, but it is important to update the month as well as the date that the sponsor representative is certifying the document. The boxes for free, reduced price, and above scale are automatically populated as you complete the form. Rename the tab at the bottom of the page to reflect the month that this for-profit roster supports. You can either double-click on the name of the tab and type in the name of the month, or right-click and select Rename. List all participants that were in attendance at the site during the month. If you're using a copy of the OMER, participants will be listed here already, and you will need to verify that they were in attendance and ensure eligibility information is accurate for the for-profit roster. Enter a 1 or an X under the eligibility determination category that is supported by documentation specific to the for-profit eligibility. Participants with valid Title XIX Medicaid information must be marked as free. All other participants must be marked as above scale. Adult for-profits will not have any reduced price eligible participants on their for-profit roster. They are either free or above scale. Enter the date of eligibility determination under the CIS determination date or other eligibility determination date column. If Title XIX Medicaid information is verified and approved by the sponsor on the CIS form, use the CIS column. If the information submitted is a Medicaid approval letter or other statement, use the other eligibility column. For participants that receive Title XIX funds for care, enter the date that the Title XIX payment was received by the center for that month. A couple things to note. As you're completing the participant section, if you forget to fill in a cell or the dates entered are not valid, you will see an error. Make sure you fix all errors, otherwise totals may not be accurate. Do not use the cut and paste functions. This causes the built-in formulas to break and the form will no longer calculate participants correctly. When you are finished entering and verifying all participants, the top section will list the total free participants. This is the number you will use to determine this month's eligibility. Note that the total Title XIX beneficiaries at the top of the page is based on the column where the Title XIX payments are documented. For each month, you will create a copy of this roster. To do this, right-click with your mouse on the name of the tab at the bottom, and then select Move or Copy. On the pop-up, select the Move to End option, and check the Create a Copy, and then click OK. You should see a second tab next to your original one, Rename to reflect the next month. Make changes as necessary to the participant list, add new participants to the bottom, and if any participants are no longer in care, just enter the date that they left care on the Transfer or Drop Date column, and the sheet will automatically stop counting those participants the month after that date. After finalizing and saving the for-profit roster for the month, the next step is to calculate the percentage. Take the number of free eligible participants based on Title XIX for the month and divide by the total site enrollment or the licensed capacity, whichever is less. Sponsors may use the optional for-profit monthly site eligibility calculation worksheet to document the percentage each month, or they may use another form of documentation. Here is an example. This site has 34 eligible participants. Divided by 85 enrolled participants, 40% is the Title XIX eligibility. This site is eligible to claim meals for the month. It's important to note that sponsors may not round up when determining the 25% eligibility. For example, this site has 21 eligible participants divided by 85 enrolled participants, which equals 24.7%. This site is not eligible for meal reimbursement this month. Let's summarize what we've learned so far about record-keeping requirements for the for-profit eligibility documentation. For-profit sponsors must comply with all applicable state and federal record-keeping requirements for CACFP sponsors and specifically for their program type. In addition, for-profit adult daycare sponsors must maintain the following records: monthly for-profit roster for each site, which lists all participants in care for the month. Current Title XIX Medicaid eligibility documentation for all participants listed as free. Documentation showing the total participants in care or the site's licensed capacity, whichever was used in the calculations. and documented calculation demonstrating if the 25% eligibility was met for each site every month. The final step in the eligibility determination process is to certify eligibility and submit the monthly CACFP claim in CMP Web for reimbursement. Sponsors must submit a claim for reimbursement each month that the site operates CACFP, regardless of whether or not the site meets the 25% eligibility requirement. On the site claim submission form in CMP Web, lines 5 through 9 document the claim information, number of operating days, attendance, and meal counts. This must be completed only if the site qualifies to claim for the month. If the site does not qualify, then you will enter 0 in those fields. Scrolling down, you will see the for-profit site section. This is where you will use your previous eligibility calculation documentation to enter the total Title XIX eligible participants, enter the total enrollment or capacity, and then choose one of the statements. Either certify that the site meets the 25% eligibility requirement, or select the statement acknowledging that the site does not qualify this month. Double-check that the information entered is correct, and then submit the site claim. Okay, time for a knowledge check. When determining the for-profit eligibility for January, the calculations showed that ABC Care Center's site was at 24.5% eligibility. A new participant that receives Medicaid benefits enrolled with the center during the last week of January, but did not attend until February. That participant can be included in the January for-profit roster because they signed and returned their paperwork during that month. True or false? The answer is false. Participants must be in attendance during the month to be listed on the for-profit roster. In this scenario, though the enrollment and eligibility documentation was turned in within the month, the participant didn't attend until the following month, so they cannot be included on the roster. Additionally, 24.5% eligibility cannot be rounded up to 25%. This site does not meet eligibility requirements for the month, and meals cannot be claimed for reimbursement. Let's do one more. ABC Care Center completed their for-profit roster for March and determined that their eligibility was 30%, so they can claim meals for reimbursement. They had no changes in participation between March and April, and no forms have expired. To save time, they can use the existing March for-profit roster rather than create a new roster for April because it's all the same information. True or false? The answer is false. Each claim month must have a separate signed and certified for-profit roster to support the claim submission, even if the information on the roster has not changed. Additionally, it's important to remember that the for-profit roster must be verified by attendance records each month to ensure that all participants on the list were also in care. Now that you're familiar with the for-profit determination process and record-keeping requirements, we're going to discuss how to tie it all together with a written procedure. Sponsors must have appropriate and effective management practices to ensure the program operates in compliance with CACFP regulations. This is done in part by having written policies and procedures that assign program responsibilities and duties. Written procedures not only help ensure compliance with CACFP regulations, but they are a guide for staff to follow. Sponsors must ensure that all staff are trained on the procedures. ODE CNP has a for-profit roster procedure template, which is recommended for use by all for-profit sponsors. Sponsors may also choose to create their own written procedures. Some tips for using the ODE CNP procedure template. Fill in each gray field for all applicable sections. Check the boxes to indicate a section is applicable, and remove sections that are not applicable. Add in detail to make each step easy to follow. Here are some overall considerations to think through when preparing to put your procedure in writing. Who will be responsible for each step of the process? Will it be one person or multiple people? The tasks involved include gathering, reviewing, and approving documents, creating the for-profit roster document and calculating the eligibility percentage, double-checking the forms, roster, and percentage calculation for accuracy, for-profit eligibility certification and claim submission. What is the timeline for completing each step? Where will the completed records be stored? And who are the identified backups for each step? With all of that information in mind, fill in the template using as much detail as possible. Lastly, once the procedure is finalized, all staff involved must be trained on the written procedure. On the screen, you can see a snip of what the ODE CNP procedure looks like. This procedure can be found on our public webpage under CACFP Program Compliance and then Procedures. The last topic we will touch on during this training is what to do with the change in ownership of your for-profit center. CACFP approval cannot transfer to a new ownership, even if the location and the participants will remain the same. Once sold, the CACFP agreement with the original owner will be terminated, and any meals served after that date cannot be claimed for reimbursement. The new business owners can apply for participation in the CACFP, but must meet all requirements of a new applicant and must complete the application process in full before meals can be claimed for reimbursement. The business must operate under the new ownership for 6 months to qualify for CACFP application. The application process can be lengthy and takes an average of 6 or more months to complete. Sponsors must notify ODE CNP of ownership changes as soon as possible before the change takes place. It's important that the new owners are aware that there will be a lapse in meal reimbursement during the application process. New owners can be instructed to contact ODE CNP for more information. Let's review what we've covered during this training. How to qualify for CACFP as a for-profit adult daycare program by meeting 25% eligibility requirement per site for each month. Record-keeping requirements, which include the for-profit roster, Title 19, Medicaid, eligibility documentation, and calculations that document whether or not the 25% eligibility has been met. Submission of a claim for reimbursement, focusing on the for-profit certification section of the claim. Overview of how to create a written for-profit policy and procedure, and what to do when there is a change in ownership. ODE supports equity and excellence for every learner. This institution is an equal opportunity provider. Thank you for taking this training.